Good morning, Red Wine. Thank you so much for asking me to be a part of your month of stewardship. Reverend Smith, thank you, Brian, for asking me to contribute a little something and to kick this off. It's an honor and a privilege. And let me tell you why. Some of you know who I am. Some of you don't know who I am. My name is Whit Martin. I started at Red Wine in 2005 as the youth director. Y'all took a big leap to try to go from youth group to youth ministry, and we had a lot of fun starting there in 2005, going all the way out to 2011. 2 years in 2007, I actually became a local pastor, and they appointed me back to Red Wine, which was wonderful. And I finished those 6 years there. I finished the last 4 as a local pastor, working and going to seminary at Asbury Theological Seminary, which is where I met Brian. My wife, Ashley, I met her right when I started, and we dated for a little while we were there, got engaged. She moved up to Gainesville, and then we got engaged right there at the church sign. We put the picture up and everything of, Ashley, will you marry me? And she actually, on the church sign, she actually put yes, Y-E-S. She stole some letters and put it up there because she said, everybody who drives by needs to know. Y'all, I want to say thank you so much. To those who are there who know me, to those who are there and you don't know who I am, you need to know you're a part of a church that makes people. You make disciples, you make pastors, you make communities. And for 173 years, you've done that. Thank you for helping me start my life. I am who I am because of Red Wine. And so thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. I hope I can give back as you're finding new and creative ways to give to the Lord. What is a revival of holiness? Well, as Methodists, we think that who we are and what it boils down to when it comes to being a Methodist has everything to do with our name, that it means being a Methodist means being methodical. It means being people who practice the means of grace, and that's just sort of something that we do. Bible reading, prayer, conversations and small groups and things like that we're just very methodical. And it's true, we do that. But the means of grace are not an end in themselves. The means of grace are to draw us in closer to God, and in doing so, introducing us to God and letting the holiness of God wash over us and making us become holy. And so the means of grace and all the Methodist things that we do are meant to make us holy. And so a revival of holiness means to recapture what it means to be holy. What it means to be holy is to mean other than. It means to be set aside or set apart. That's the root word of that Hebrew word for holy. It means other than. That's why God was so different and told to the rest of the world in the Old Testament that he was different. It's why the Canaanites and the Egyptians on both sides of the journey, both sides of the Exodus, why when the Egyptians heard the story as the people of God are leaving, and the Canaanites who would be receiving the people as they're journeying across the desert, it's why they stood apart. It's because their God was holy. He was other than. So how are we recapturing our otherness? How are we recapturing the fact that we're different, that we're set apart? And I think we're different and we're set apart in our holiness, in our emphasis, and in our stewardship, in the sense that the way that we give and the way that we provide, we do so in a way that is completely different, that is holy, as in W, holy, different than others. And it's important that we recapture that. Looking at this concept of what a living representation of a living sacrifice is kind of cool. Even just sitting here doing this for you right now, I was thinking about a cup, how amazing a cup is. A cup is one entity. It has one compartment, and it holds all of what it can in one space. If we're to be living sacrifices, as it says in the Romans 12 text, if we're supposed to be living sacrifices, it means that we're sacrificing ourselves every day in a living way, in a whole way. And when we sacrifice, it's not a matter of being able to pour out a little bit of this or a little bit of that. It's one cup, it's one filling, and we've been given what kind of filling as Christians? We've been given the Holy Spirit. To be a living representation of a living sacrifice means to pour out the Holy Spirit in all of its fullness, just as we receive the Holy Spirit in all of God's fullness. And to pour out the Holy Spirit is a pretty significant act, a very significant act for a disciple. It means that you're pouring out love, you're pouring out grace, you're pouring out discipline, you're pouring out resource, you're pouring out talent, you're pouring out gifting. All of who we are and all that makes up what we are as Christians, as disciples, as followers of Jesus, we pour all of that out. And so a living representation of a living sacrifice is one who every day is pouring out all of who God is and all of what God has given to us to the rest of the world. We're providing. We're always providing for ourselves, for each other, and for those who are outside of that circle that we tend to keep. And it's okay to keep that circle, that social circle, that discipleship circle. But we're always meant, in every circle that we're in, to be able to turn outward. And so we have sort of a personal holiness, just as John Wesley wanted us to have, but then we also have a social holiness. Because every time we dive in and we dig into who we are and who God's making us to be, God turns us outward. And so everything that's forged and poured into that cup is then meant to have a social aspect so that we can pour it out. A living representation of a living sacrifice. It's someone who's holy and gives that holiness. Stewardship, it's a very interesting word. It basically, at the most basic definition you can come up with, is that it's someone who is in charge of something that does not belong to them. And so I'm given something, it doesn't belong to me, but I've been given authority over that thing. But that means I have to give it back too. I don't get to keep that thing. I'm meant to receive it, to cultivate it, and then turn around and give that back. When it comes to stewardship, when it comes to holiness, we're receiving this great gift of God's love, God's grace, God's salvation. And once we receive that, we cultivate it. We cultivate it. We take that and we make everything we can out of that. Everything that we can out of that. Through all of our discipleship, all of our prayer, all of our individual and corporate Bible study, we are cultivating the gift of God inside of ourselves. And then we take it and we offer it in an act of stewardship. We're giving it back to God. And hopefully we're giving it back to God in a way that it has been multiplied, it has been cultivated, that it's better than it was when it was given to us. Obviously, I can't improve on what God is doing, but God does expect me to take what He's given me, to partner with Him, and then for Him to multiply that gift so that I can then in turn do as He does and pour myself out. Giving, sacrificing, that's what's so cool about stewardship, is that we have this opportunity to take what doesn't belong to us, have God perfect it, work it, make it something incredible, and then God say, now go, present this to the world. I've worked on you, I've worked on this thing, and now I want you to give it, and I want you to give it away. So the question is will we cultivate it? Well, first, will we receive it? 2, will we cultivate it? And then 3, will we give it away? All of who we are, like I said before, in that cup, that whole gift that's been given to us, pouring all of it out. Stewardship, receiving it, cultivating it, and giving it away. I was sitting here racking my brain trying to think about a personal memory where I experienced holiness and someone giving me holiness while I was at Red Wine. I'll be honest, it was a holy experience for me. Red Wine Church was always for me an opportunity to be set apart and set aside. For me, it started with sitting in the office there, the pastor's office with Mike Pinson, when we sat down for an interview and I was scared to death. I looked at this beautiful church and I said, what a wonderful place to come. And then all of a sudden, Reverend Mike Pinson, love Mike, miss Mike, looked right at me and he says, will you come and will you join with us? Now I got to talk to the SPR and you need to meet the parents and all this kind of stuff. But I said, I would love to. I would absolutely love to. And the journey for me really began there, red wine, set apart for a special purpose, turned around and put this call on my life and helped me learn what it meant to be set aside for a special purpose, taught me how to be a good steward. And the reason red wine was able to teach me how to do that is because red wine was filled not only with this culture of stewardship, but was filled with stewards, people who knew how to take something, work it, and then give it away. I want to challenge you to take up the mantle of who you have always been, who you have been in my life, and then who you are on the cusp of being now as you have new and creative opportunities that are sitting in front of you. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs and what plans you guys have for the future, but I can tell you right now, with everything that God has done in and through Red Wine, with the area exploding around you, and with an amazing pastor like Reverend Brian Smith, I got a feeling that Red Wine is on the brink of some pretty amazing things. And so Red Wine, you've got the opportunity to be stewards. Are you going to be a steward? Are you going to take it, what God has given, and receive what God has given? Are you going to cultivate it? And then are you going to give it away, just as Christ gives of himself in every possible way? Folks, thanks for letting me be with you this morning. One last thing. My name is Whit Martin, and I'm a steward.